All right, so hopefully you guys have your Unit 5 books opened up. We're going to take notes on page 9. We're going to work with equations of lines. You guys have seen these equations before in algebra class. We're going to talk about the two main concepts of slope and the y-intercept. Right, so we're going to graph these equations without being able to use graphing calculators. So we got to first understand two things about the equation. What number represents the slope? What number represents the y-intercept? Okay, looking at the y-intercept, please make sure that you understand that it's also including the sign of -7. So our slope is telling us basically what we've been working on, rise over run. But since this is a whole number, we're going to take the 2 and we're going to actually put that over 1. So it's going to tell us that we're actually going to rise 2 and we're going to run to the right 1. Okay, the y-intercept tells us where you're going to essentially begin. So we're going to plot the coordinate of 0, -7 first, and then we're going to rise 1, 2, and run 1. Okay, so I'm going to 1, down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's my y-intercept of 0, -7. And then you're going to rise from this point to 1. 1, 2, run 1. 1, 2, run 1. Run 2, run 1. Okay. So at this point, if you have a ruler that is handy, you'll want to connect these lines or the dots to make a straight line. Okay, and then label it. Y equals 2x minus 7. Okay, now we're going to graph the second line that's here. And again, understanding that the -1/2 is our slope, and the +3 is our y-intercept. Okay, so again, this is going to tell us a rise over run number, but in this case, since it's negative, we're not going to actually rise. We're actually going to go down because it's negative. We're going to go down 1, and then we're going to move to the right 2. Okay. And then the y-intercept is a point where you begin at, which is in this case, 0, +3. So I'm going to plot the y-intercept first, and then use the slope to get the points after that. So 1, 2, 3. So we have our begin point. Remember, you can't move until you begin. So that's the reason why I need the y-intercept. I need to begin first. So now I'm going to actually move down 1, right 2. Down 1, right 2. Down 1, right 2. And after I have enough points, you can use any type of straight edge. It doesn't need to be a ruler. You can use the side of a piece of paper if you need to. Just enough to be able to connect them. And then please don't forget to write your label. Okay. So if you're paying in particular attention to the slopes of these two lines, if you notice that this is 2 over 1 and this was down 1 over 2, what's actually happening is that we actually have a perpendicular slope. Because if you look, this is positive, this is negative, so there's our opposites, and then they're also flipped of one another, so that's our reciprocal part. So yes, these are opposite reciprocals, making the lines again perpendicular. All right. Now they want to know, what is the solution set to this equation? The beauty of it is that since we graphed both of these from up above, we can actually just find this point right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and up 1. Okay, so the solution set to this is 4, 1, but they're not looking for an exact y value. They're looking for the x value in this equation. So the answer really is just x equals 4. And why is that? It's because the lines intersect at 4, 1. Okay, so when we were looking at all of these equations, again, I was talking about the two very important words, slope and the intercept. So that's what we're going to practice on this next section. So we're going to actually skip exercise 2, and I'm going to move over to page 10 and cover exercise 3. All right. So what we need to work on is that lines should be in the form of y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to look at the very first equation, and if you notice, the y should be on the left side, and anything with the x or the regular numbers should be on the right side. Okay. So looking at this first equation, what we need to do is we need to get y alone. So anything that's with the y has to go to the other side by using its opposite operation. So therefore I'm going to subtract the 2x from both sides. That will cancel it on the left, leaving me with just the y. Okay. Now remember, this is not going to give you 5x. These are not like terms. So we write them as separately. I like to keep the x in the front for the slope and the y-intercept in the back. Now looking at this equation, the y is by itself. So therefore there's nothing else to do to this equation. I can identify my slope and I can identify my y-intercept. Okay. So moving on to the next equation. This, on the other hand, has something in front of the y. We'll get to that in just a minute. But I need to be able to subtract the 2x because, again, the 2x should not be on the left-hand side. It needs to be over on the right-hand side. And the opposite of a positive is a negative. Okay. All right, I'm going to drop down this whole entire 3y. And these two right here, again, I cannot subtract. They're not like terms. So I'm going to do 2x. And this is a positive 12, so I'm going to write plus 12. And now I'm going to divide by this 3 in front of the y to get rid of it because it's attached to the y by multiplication. Alright, so this becomes y equals, and then this becomes negative 2/3 x. Slope generally is a fraction, so it's okay to leave it as a fraction. But this I can easily divide. 12 divided by 3 does equal 4. Okay. Now taking a look at C, we're going to continue with that same practice. This 4x should not be here. That definitely needs to go to the other side so I can get this y by itself. Right. So I'm going to subtract the 4x like I have been because the opposite of a positive is a negative when we're going to subtract. Okay, again, not like terms, so don't subtract those for real. Okay, but most importantly, a lot of you guys are going to forget that there's a negative sign right here. So that negative sign needs to come down right here with that y. So please don't forget that. And then here, x in front, attach the y-intercept to the back. Now I'm going to divide by the number in front of y, and again, don't forget the negative sign. Minus 6, negative 6, sorry. Divide by negative 6, divide by negative 6. Now right here, if you remember, there's a negative on top divided by a negative on the bottom is now going to cancel out and create a positive integer. But we do have to take that 4, 6 and actually reduce it. So again, you're trying to figure out what number goes into both. So I'm going to divide both of these by 2. And that's going to create 2/3. So this slope here reduces to 2/3. So 2/3 x. 7 divided by negative 6 is going to give you a really funky decimal. So therefore, I'm just going to leave it as a fraction. And again, it's going to become negative because a positive divided by a negative is a negative. All right? So I'm going to go ahead and stop the lesson there. We'll do exercise 4 in a later lesson.